everything Pokemon, and today begins our Crimson Invasion deck analysis. As you can tell, this is a slideshow video. The cards aren't out yet on PTCGO, so hopefully you can bear with us. But today we're going to be running down one of my favourite cards from the new set, and why I think it's good. This will be one of probably a couple Silvally lists that we've been trying out. Today will be the metal build, but there are other ones out there, so bear that in mind. In this video, we'll be going through the basic concepts of Silvally, then we'll move on to the list itself. We'll get to look at a few matchups that are most important, and also look at some tech cards that aren't in my list that could be considered for your own. So, let's kick off with the basic concept. Silvally is a 210 HP Stage 1 Pokemon, and has a really nice ability, Gyro Unit, and this is one of the big strengths of Silvally. It provides free retreat for all of your basic Pokemon. That really helps out when you're trying to move between your guys. It means you can't get really stalled by Guzma, and it's just going to make the deck move a lot smoother. You can have lots of different basic Pokemon in your list, not having to worry about the drawbacks of having them throughout the game, because you can simply move between them, which is very nice. Basically, it turns any basic Pokemon into something like a Tapu Lele that we've seen a lot of in decks just for his free retreat alone, and now basically any of your basics can have that sort of tagline onto it, so it's a really nice ability to have. He also has acceleration with his main attack. For 3 colorless energy, you deal 120 and you're able to attach 1 basic energy from your discard pile to any of your benched Pokemon. This is going to help maintain lots of different bench attackers for you, as well as other Silvallies throughout the game. So you're doing solid 2-hit KOs, you're 1-hit KOing a lot of basic Pokemon like Gardevoirs, non-EX and GXs, whilst getting 2 hits on the bigger stuff throughout the game and continuing to accelerate. That's one thing that's really important to me. It's that you really don't run out of attackers when you play Silvally lists, because when you get into him, you're just going to start powering up attackers throughout the game. So that's really cool. He also has colorless typing, which means you can build towards the most popular archetypes in the game. For example, right now, Gardevoir is one of the most popular archetypes. So in this list, we're going to throw in some metal Pokemon to try and make that matchup very good for us. On top of that, he has memory tools, which provide, extra typing that we can try and cover our own weaknesses and also try and hit more types for weakness ourselves. Currently, there's only Psychic and Fighting Memory available. We've seen a couple more come out recently in Japan, or at least have been revealed in Japan, and who knows, there could be more down the line. So I think Silvally has the potential to be a good old-fashioned counter deck to whatever's the most important and whatever's the most popular archetype at the time, which makes me think that Silvally will be one of the key cards in the format since its release, and will continue to get stronger the more memory cards we get given. So it's going to be an interesting development to see how many of these he actually gets, because right now it feels like if anything becomes super popular that you can simply hit for weakness on with Silvally, you're going to have a good time. So it feels like a very strong card indeed. And on top of that, he also has 1-hit KO potential with his GX attack, which sometimes can be the finishing move, or sometimes can simply deal with a threat that needs to be dealt with on a certain turn, because his GX attack deals 50 times the number of your opponent's Pokemon in play. And typically that will be getting 1-hit KOs. Just think that everyone has to go for Lele Brigette basically in this meta. So you're going towards that 200-ish damage mark straight after a Brigette, which is pretty simple. And you have Choice Band on top of that, so you're dealing with most GXs. So yeah, really, really nice GX attack. Very powerful. It's the same one as the Lycanroc GX attack, but this one's all colorless and with acceleration from some of your basic Pokemon that we play in this list, as well as Silvally himself. I think this is a bit more efficient than the Lycanroc attack, even though it's physically 1 more energy card. I think this is more reasonable, strangely enough. So there we go. That is the basic concept of Silvally. I think he's a very strong card inherently, and has the room to be teched around with just because he's all colorless, and his ability gives you access to playing lots of different Pokemon that you wouldn't normally consider, that get much better just because they all become free retreaters anyway, so they're not really liabilities that get stuck in your active for too long at least. So very, very good card. So let's jump into the list. Starting off with the main attackers, we're going to play 4 of the type Null. This is one thing to note, is that you have a very, very good basic Pokemon. You're a Stage 1 GX that has 210 HP as a main attacker, but your basic is a 110 HP basic Pokemon, so it's a really tanky opener, which is very good. It means you're much less weak to devolving than other evolution builds, which is epic, and also he carries quite a nice early game attack For a double colorless, you deal 30 and reduce 30 done to yourself by your opponent's Pokemon the following turn. So it increases your tank ability, and also it sets up numbers, which is very important to note. Dealing this little poke of 30 for a DCE, with a choice band on your Silvally, you can then do 150 and deal, 180 over 2 turns, which is very strong. Or vice versa, you could put the choice band on turn 1, and you can do 60 on the first turn if it's a GX, and then again, you go into your Silvally of your own and try and finish them off with the 120 damaging attack. So against non-evolving EXs and GXs, non-evolving EXs, GXs, you can hit that 180 mark over 2 turns quite quickly, especially if you go second. So that's a really important attack to note, and in general, you just have high HP, which is very cool. Then you can see the 3 Silvally GX themselves. I've been flirting between 3 and 4. At the moment, I'm happy enough with 3 plus a rescue stretcher. But as soon as you get into this guy, you're super happy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this go up to a 4 count just to be as consistent as possible, because it means that any of your awkward starters become no longer awkward as long as you can get into your Silvally on turn 2. So he really is the focus of the deck. I think most of the time people land on 3 OVs for evolving GXs, especially stage 1s. That's sort of been the standard count, but I kind of want to work in a 4th because I think it's good, but at the moment I don't have the space. But yeah, he is the main attacker. We have lots of other attackers floating around the deck, but he will still be the main focus, and his ability is still very nice. Then you can see 2 Registeels. Registeel is another new card from Crimson Invasion, and also carries that very simple 1 energy attack that can deal 30. So as I said, with the type Null maths, you can also deal this maths with Registeel for early damage and really putting things in range for you, which is very cool. Dealing 30, and you're also able to attach a metal energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. So on top of the fact that Silvally can set up energy throughout the board, so can Registeel in the early turns. So you're really getting a good amount of energy acceleration. Trying to get metals in the bin is definitely part of this strategy for certain. Using your Ultra Balls, using your Sycamores on metals is oftentimes what we're going for in the early turns to set up the acceleration from the discard pile, and you're also setting up the maths with the Registeel. Bear in mind that Alolan Vulpix as well as Ralts are 2 very important and prominent basic Pokemon that people use. They have 60 HP, they're both weak to metal, so Registeel can pick up early prizes in those matchups, and it's one of the reasons why we have quite a nice Gardevoir matchup ourselves, because we can deal good numbers. And bear in mind that Sylveon GX is also used heavily in Gardevoir variants, and slapping a choice band onto Registeel means you can be 2-hitting them very early on in the game, and is very, very dangerous. The reason we don't play more is because as long as you get into your Silvally, you can Brigette this guy out and start pressuring on turn 2 quite happily. So I'm happy with the 2 count. He does have a second attack that can deal 90 for 2 metals and a colorless. Even with acceleration, I think we have more realistic attackers that will set up. So really he's in here just to get the acceleration going early on and start pressuring down some of these metal weak Pokemon that we see so often in Gardevoir builds. Further support Pokemon, we have the typical Tapu Lele GX. Energy Drive is still an option with DCEs in this deck. Tapu Cure unavailable because we're using basic metals, but the 3 count just to try and be as consistent as possible. Could go up to 4 if you're really trying to simplify the deck. I'll talk about where we can find our cuts later on. But I think for now, 3 Tapu Lele, fairly standard, as well as 1 Necrozma GX. This is a card that personally, I love this card, and he provides another GX attack to the deck that can be very useful, dealing 100 to each of your opponent's Pokemon GX and EX that isn't affected by Winning Resistance, etc. But that is really nice. As we saw earlier, Silvally is dealing 120. He does have his own GX attack option, which can blow up something at some point in the game, but oftentimes I like using Necrozma throughout the game because he can put everything in range for then Silvally to clean up for the rest of the game. That's a big approach that we can go for. The Black Ray is very nice. And also, this is a big approach when you're up against Volcanion builds specifically, because you can try and use Necrozma and put everything in range for then the Tapu Leles and your Silvallies to finish off the rest of the game. You're oftentimes falling behind in prizes in that matchup, but you're going to try and use the Black Ray to set up damage throughout the board so you can claw back with a combination of Ends and other disruption cards. So that is the main idea. Necrozma, very good for the fire archetypes and trying to win that matchup where otherwise Silvally just continuing to do 120 isn't going to do it. and also Necrozma can set up damage against other high HP Pokemon. Sometimes you can have the option to use it against Gardevoir. Oftentimes going down prizes is not a bad thing against Gardy. Bear in mind as well that they can play Gallade that can one-hit KO your Cobalion. Oh, sorry, not your Cobalions. Your Silvallies. So oftentimes you want to use other Pokemon, mainly your metal stuff. So Necrozma is also an option against some higher HP things. So then the Silvally can finish stuff off. That is oftentimes the case. But bear in mind, Silvally also has his own GX attack. So you have to be careful and you have to start playtesting to figure out when to use Necrozma and when not to. But for now, I'm fairly happy with the 1 count. He provides a great option in the deck. Magearna EX has that Mystic Heart ability that is a very nice thing to cash in on. It means you prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks except damage done to each of your Pokemon that has Metal Energy attached to it. This means that you can protect yourself from Plea, protect yourself from Drampa using Righteous Edge, and a few other annoying abilities out there right now. Or sorry, effects of attacks, I should say. So these are things you really should be covering. Additionally, Soul Blaster can one-hit KO Gardevoirs with simply 1 Metal Energy attachment as well as a DCE. And when you have the amount of acceleration we have via Silvally and via Registeel, it shouldn't be a problem to set up the Magearna EX to take one-hit KOs against Gardevoir. And that's pretty good stuff. So yeah, Soul Blaster is a very nice option, and you can simply free retreat out of it if you have a Silvally in play for future turns, so you don't have to worry about the adverse effects of Soul Blaster. That's very good. Oranguru is seen in basically every deck that isn't either playing Octillery or some other draw engine card and isn't a Gardevoir variant. We're going to have no problem throwing him into our list either, especially when you don't have to worry about his awkward retreat cost. Instruct is just a really nice way that you can try and round out your games. And he does have the Psychic attack. Again, everything's relevant when you have this much acceleration in the deck. So Psychic is also a non-EX option that can maybe help you out against some Safeguard style Pokemon, or trying to skew the prize trade. He can also be beneficial. Then we have 1 copy of Cobalion. Cobalion is a great finisher for the deck in general, as well as a bit more hate against Gardevoir builds, just in case we didn't have enough. Revenge Blast deals 30 plus 30 more for each prize card your opponent has taken. So, again, we have this amount of acceleration via Registeel early on and via Silvally throughout the game. You can quite easily set this guy up to be your finisher. Maybe you go for early prizes, doing that setup of 30 damage into 150 with the main attack of Silvally. Then you go for a GX attack with Silvally, and then Cobalion's ready to take the final prizes. Whereas Silvally himself, you know, once you've used your GX attack, you're pretty much not able to simply Guzma for game on things like Tapu Lele's because you're capped at 120. Well, now Cobalion can get you there for game, so that's really good stuff. And yeah, additional hate for Gardevoir, just in case there wasn't enough for them to have headaches about. Sitting there with a Cobalion with 1 energy on the bench means that they really have to be careful about what they go for. They pretty much have to cycle their Gallade as much as possible, and that's not always easy when they typically only play 1 copy of either Rescue Stretcher or Super Rod, which is actually becoming more common, and that hurts them even more because it's less immediate, and that makes life easier for Cobalion because he can start swinging and dealing good numbers against pretty much all their boards. So really good, really good card. And again, the 2 retreat cost completely mitigated as soon as you get into your Silvally. So that will round out the Pokemon. A little bit techy, but overall not too crazy. Let's move into the items. We're going to play 4 Ultra Balls as well as 3 Field Blower. Field Blower is really important against the amount of Gardevoir that you're facing recently, especially things like Drampa Gardevoir. This activates, or sorry, gets rid of their tools, which is one big thing, but also specifically against Drampa, you can get rid of Po-Town, and this is a huge deal because you have 210 HP on your Silvally GX. If you let Po-Town be in play when you evolve, you go down to 180, which is in range of a Drampa. So being able to Field Blower that off means that you can be safe against Po-Town and therefore tank hits against Drampa. And also you can Field Blower away tools from the Gardevoir, so your Oranguru works, as well as you can regain your free retreat if you need it. And also it puts Magearna back online, so you have to be less worried about Righteous Edge. Still, Righteous Edge will be a good option for them as long as they keep re-establishing the lock, but in general, Field Blower going to be very nice for combating Gardevoir and also combating Po-Town in general. It's being splashed into a few other decks that try and go for a Devolve approach. I've already said that 110 HP is a lot more HP than other evolving decks, so already we're not too concerned about Espeon. but this just helps out in general. We're not playing our own stadium, so having a high field blower count makes a lot of sense overall. Then we're going to play 3 copies of Choice Band. Again, this is one of these cards that I've sort of floated between the 3 and 4 count of. Right now, because I have a few other memory tools in the list, I think 3 is the right choice. It helps out the maths with the Sylveon and the early 30 damage pokes, which I've said. You know, when you have 6 leaves, the 4 type nulls and the 2 Registeels that can both do this early 30, I think it's really important to have Choice Band to follow that up. And also Choice Band is beneficial for going for the Silvally GX attack as well. So overall, really, really good card for just making the numbers work. I don't think we fully need 4 copies. Right now, 3 is where I'm happy. A few additional items. We're going to play 1 copy of Special Charge because DC is very important to keep hitting on a lot of your attackers actually. The Silvallies, most importantly, but also things like Tapu Lele. When you can free retreat out of your Leles, it just becomes even more efficient. So it's really nice to recover these and make sure that you can close out your games. Rescue Stretcher as well, going to be nice for recycling any of your one-offs, especially if they're important in the matchup, like Cobalion could be. And also getting you more Silvally. And then we're going to play 2 of each of the memory tools. So this is the Psychic Memory, which means that Silvally gains Psychic typing, or actually becomes a Psychic type. So he no longer is a Colorless type, which is actually important to note because it means that when you put this tool on, you can actually not only now attack Necrozma, you can actually hit it for weakness and one-shot them. So that's actually really important. So it becomes a Psychic type rather than gains Psychic typing. I should have made that more clear. But yeah, you become a Psychic type, which now means you can hit Buzzwole GX for 1-hit KOs. And bear in mind, they hit weakness back onto Silvally, so it's important to try and balance the scales a little bit there. And also, Espeon GX is becoming more likely a 1 or 2 of in Drampa Gardevoir builds. So it's also nice to hit those for weakness as well, and really gives you easier targets throughout the game. The Fighting type memory is also very good. Mirror matches could be a thing, bear in mind. I'm personally loving Silvally, and hopefully others get on board as well. There's also going to be some Zoroark players out there that you can hit for weakness, as well as Drampa GX himself. So we have both memories in here for the Drampa Guard matchup. The Psychic is going to help you out against the Espeon GX, and the Fighting element is going to help you out against the Drampa. So really important to have both of these, I think. Potentially the Fighting one can be cut down. Could even be a 1 count if you want to just cut 1 and play a Skylar instead. That's something I've been thinking about. Or cut 1 and maybe even play like a Gladion. That's kind of been something I've been considering because I think the Fighting one is less relevant. But as long as Zoroark shows up, I don't know why I said Decidueye. If Zoroark and Silvally both actually show up in the meta, it could be important to play 2. So that's why I've gone for it. But if you want to go a bit more techie, you could just try and be cheeky, throw in an extra supporter, and then just go to 1 copy. That's something I've been thinking about, and potentially this is a cut down the line. But in a blind meta, I quite like having 2 of each memory card. I think it makes sense. Onto supporters, again, very simple. What I love about Silvally is that you have a lot of space to have the consistency cards. So we're going to max out on Sycamore, N, and Guzma. Guzma, of course, very nice in here when you can provide free retreat. You can easily move between your guys, so Guzma is never going to hinder you and is always going to be nice on your end as long as you have your abilities. And also, when your abilities are shut off, you still have Guzma as an out if you can't find one of your 3 field blowers. We also have Acerola in here. This is actually like an unsung hero of the deck. It is very strong. When you can continually do 120 hits and accelerate to the bench, you can oftentimes actually loop your attacker, even though it's a 3 energy attack cost, because you have this acceleration to the bench. You can afford to do it. So just as we've seen with other Evolution GX Pokemon, you can try and reset a turn of damage with the Acerola, put down your Silvally, reattach a DC onto a new one, and get another hit in. You are trying to 2-hit KO throughout the game, definitely in the middle stages with your 120 damaging attack. So Acerola really does help out, and it really chips in against a few less favourable matchups on paper. For example, Metagross, where they hit 150 or 180, the Acerola is going to be amazing. Glisspod Garb as well. You can both be sort of Acerola bouncing for a few turns and really undo the damage that they've been doing. And there's a few other matchups as well where they're going to try and go for 2-hit KO approaches. Acerola is always going to be a nice option. And we're just going to round it out with one copy of Brigette. I think with so many high HP basics, I'm fairly content with just having the one copy. There's not too many things we need to search out drastically, but the Brigette is definitely going to help out at getting some type nulls on the board and the Registeel early if you haven't happened to lead with either of them. And also can get some of your tech GXs on the board as well, like the Necrozma, if you feel like it's important to power them up quickly as well. So very straightforward supporter line. Acerola may look a little bit out of place, but trust me, in testing, it has been a star player in some matchups, so bear this in mind. And we'll round it out with a very solid amount of energy, 4 double colorless and 9 metal. This gives you enough to always be attaching every single turn, which is important, and also hopefully gives you enough metal energy to also be putting in the bin for your Registeel and your Silvally, so that you can accelerate throughout the game. So nothing too surprising here. Very simple, important stuff. DCE is one of the most important cards in the deck. That's why you play the special charge. And also the metals, just you're going to see them a lot, and that's always comforting. So let's have an overview of the full list that I've just shown off. Pause now if you wish to do some net decking. I'll try and put this in the comments section as well. If you've got this far, you can check the comments as well in a different format. But yeah, very simple overall. I think the sort of cuts that I would look to make, the fighting memories right now is a bit of a grey area. I could cut down to 1 in theory. Also the Necrozma, it's very nice in theory. It may not be good enough to win you fire matchups. Maybe we need to go into a different direction and just back up the Silvally GX a little bit more. Maybe bump that up to a 4th count. That would be one of the cards that I'm really trying to work in as a 4th Silvally. A 4th Field Blower as well may seem like very overkill, but depending on the amount of Potown and Drampa you expect, it may also be reasonable. So right now I would say the floating slots would be one of the 2 fighting memories, maybe both if you don't feel that Zoro or Silvally will show up. And also the Necrozma GX. I personally love him, and I've tried to put him in a bunch of decks. And it just makes sense when you already have energy acceleration. But again, it may be one of these cards that's slightly too niche that you may end up cutting overall and just keeping the metal package instead. And maybe bumping up some of these other counts, like the 4th Silvally or the 4th Field Blower. These could be reasonable. But overall, I think this is a very safe, consistent baseline for your testing, and I really hope it does work out for you. So, let's look at some matchups. There's actually quite a few crosses out here as I take a quick swig of water. But bear in mind, 3 of these crossings out are all different Buzzwole builds, and I think more than likely people will go towards a Gardevoir style of Buzzwole, and maybe Buzzwole Silvally, that's one that I actually quite like and I want to profile. But in general, Buzzwole's a problem. Even though you have Psychic Memory, the weakness is very aggressive early on, especially because they can hit type nulls for 1-hit KOs if they play Strong Energy and Fury Belt, and I think Fury Belt is probably the superior way to play Buzzwole. And not only that, they can undo damage a lot of the time if you don't find your Psychic Memories as well. So, lots of reasons why Buzzwole builds may be slightly unfavoured. I think Vikabulu would also be awkward because you don't have any ability lock. You can't Guzma up the Vikavolt for 1-hits because you can only hit them for 120 unless you have your Fighting Memory on board, which could be a thing, I guess. But in general, Bulu with Choice Band just does too much work against you for a long period of the time. You need to get a GX off early. You need to maybe get into Cobalion to get 1-hit KOs to have a chance in that matchup, but I wouldn't have you favoured as long as Vikabulu gets into, turn 2 Vikavolt, etc. Volk, even with the Necrozma, I think is a little bit unfavoured. Greninja as well. They can always have the capacity to lose themselves to the game. But as long as you're not playing Giratina promo, I think Greninja will be a bad matchup. I would never play Giratina promo at the moment anyway, because I think Greninja's like tier 3. So I wouldn't tech for that matchup, just accept that that will be awkward and hope that they brick. And the last one that's most relevant is Golisopod Gardevoir. That's not great. Even with 2 Acerola on our side, they have more bouncing. They have more disruption as well with Gardevoir, so it's a tightrope trying to stay out of Trashalanche range throughout the game. And also you're both doing this sort of bouncing and moving sort of strategy, and hopefully you come out on top, but I have that slightly unfavourable. So with that all said, Silvally actually has quite a handful of good matchups. Having a strong Gardevoir will be very, very important for London for certain, and this does have, I believe, at least a 60, maybe 65% Guardy, which is very strong. Even though they play Gallade, I still believe it's very strong for you. Drampagarb, I have that at like 55% as well, so that's fairly favoured. And I think you can only really get as high as 55% against Drampa unless you go super hard to tech against it, which is, you know, very difficult to do just because it's such a safe deck. So anything that can go between like 50 and 55, that's all you can really take against Drampa. And then from there, I think it's, you know, around the 50-50 mark, if not better at times. So overall, I think Silvally is a good card, definitely. We may not see it at its highest power level currently, but I like going to target the main deck of the format, and that is currently Gardevoir. That has, you know, probably the most hype alongside Drampagarb going into London, and may well end up being the most played deck. So having a good matchup against that seems like a good idea to me, because it could easily be two or three of your rounds in London. And picking up some freebies here and there, or at least positive matchups, is definitely going to be an important ticket for you getting into day 2 and even further in the event. So let's end up on some tech options. Just a few Pokemon here. I am playing Necrozma currently, but I'm not playing Espeon EX. My main theory behind that is, if you're going to set up 100 damage anyway on everything, you may as well just finish them off with Silvally and get 1-hit KOs, rather than go for a Miraculous Shine, or sorry, go for 2-hit KOs, rather than go for Miraculous Shine, and you're sort of taking half the prizes because you're only taking single prizes when you devolve them back to their hands, which is pretty big. Zoroark GX could be nice in here. Maybe just like a 1-1 or 2-2 count at the very most, if you start thinning down the Silvally line. Just because Zoroark is really nice for getting rid of metal energies throughout the game, and also gives you a bit more draw engine. Maybe you could cut the Octillery, or sorry, the Oranguru, and also thin down your Silvally line to fit in a 1-1 Zoroark. It's something I've thought about, especially when you're playing Acerola. It's really nice to do it on Zoroark as well. And the final card I consider is the new Miltank, that has its healing effect. When it's active and you attach an energy to one of your Pokemon, you can heal 90. Because you have free retreat, basically any time between turns, if you've suffered a knockout and you have something else damaged on your board, you can go into Miltank, try and get that attachment to heal stuff off, and then simply free retreat out of the Miltank. You don't need Floatstone, it's just naturally on the board because of your Silvally. So there's some synergy there. Overall, I don't think it's great. I prefer the Acerola route overall, but that could be a route you want to go for. Finally, a couple of supporter options. I mentioned that you could potentially try and fit Skylar into the deck. Skylar's really nice to try and fish out those memory cards, as well as keep you a little bit more consistent by having physically better turn 1 supporter cards in general. Skylar's still sort of like a really nice card to just sneak into decks here and there if you want to. Now that Versus Seeker's rotated, it's always good to have just more physical supporters in decks. And finally, Gladion. Gladion's a card that many people underrate, I feel. But this is a DC-based deck, and we do have some interesting one-of Pokemon, so Gladion could fit in here just for that reason alone. My throat is absolutely dying, so I will leave this video here, guys. Please leave a like to the video if you did, subscribe to the channel if you've not already, and let me know what other Crimson Invasion decks you want to see. For now, though, it has been Joe from OmniPoke, and I need a drink of water, and gotta get out of here, so I will see you guys next time. Cheers.